Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Shake and Bake F1. I am your host, Adrian Huff. Make sure you hit that like button before we get going and subscribe to the channel. I'm joined, as always, by my Canadian co-host, RJ McCullen. RJ, I ask you this every week. You're getting used to it. What's been grinding your gears this week since we've last spoken?
Oof. Well, my grinding my gears kind of goes together with two things. So I'm going to start with, as you can tell, I have kind of debuting a new look this week. I was doing this stream for the quali on Friday. Just to spice it up a little bit, I thought I'd throw a little caveat in there that if Lewis Hamilton didn't qualify top 5, I would get a haircut. And I thought it was a no-brainer that he would qualify top 5. He did not qualify top 5. So therefore, you see, I have fresh new cut.
Looks good.
I like it. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but I like it. So, but yeah, that kind of rolls into what's grinding my gears. I'm going to stick with F1 this week, and it's just Mercedes' general incompetence, because I'm starting to wonder how this team won 7 championships in a row. I mean, they're having so many problems. They're not even like they're the 4th or 5th fastest team right now, and they don't look like they're any closer to moving up. Like every other team seems to be getting better every week. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but they're getting worse, if anything. It's Lewis's final year. They're already giving George preferential treatment, and they're talking about bringing Max in. They're talking about all this other stuff that we're going to get into. I don't want to talk about it too much, but yeah, pretty disappointing, and just getting to the point where it's kind of pissing me off and making it frustrating to watch. Still love F1, but it's kind of making it frustrating to watch, because there's one thing if Max is going to win every race, but at least I could hope for a Lewis podium. That doesn't seem to be in the cards for any time soon. So that's what's grinding my gears. What's grinding your gears?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. My 2 bets so far have not done me well. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Mercedes, because I do have some thoughts about them. But this week I'm also going with F1. Lance Stroll is grinding my gears. I mean, I understand why he has a seat, but every single week it feels like anytime I think, oh, he's actually kind of getting it together, he just completely bends it in the race, and just classic Lance Stroll. And also he was a bit sassy to his engineer, and I don't like that. Some people like that about Lance, but I don't like that. Yeah, he's been grinding my gears. Don't like him.
Yeah. No, I want to like him because he's Canadian, but he just makes it so difficult every week.
Miss Latifi.
Oh yeah, we forgot to put in the forgot to put in our grinds my gears transition.
That's right. This has been grind my gears.
Oh, there it is. There, yeah.
I like it.
So there's that. I guess we can move on, because we're going to touch on both of those a little bit. But there's been a few small updates in the Christian Horner saga. We both watched the Rocket Powered Mohawks video that kind of went into the details of those of us that didn't get the emails. I don't know if that was a picture of his finger or a picture of his tiny little dick, but either way, Christian Horner, I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, in terms of actual, well, it's not really actual news. It's still kind of conjecture and rumors, but there's 2 little things that came up this week, which could turn into big things. One involves Dr. Helmut Marko, a man that we have talked all the shit about in this podcast, because he is an old man and very racist, but he seems to have some sort of hold over Max Verstappen. And rumors have started to come out that not only was it Jos Verstappen that leaked, which Red Bull really has no control over, also it was Dr. Helmut Marko. I don't know why he's called the doctor, but I'm just going to emphasize Dr. Helmut Marko. Apparently also was behind some of these leaks, to which Red Bull is saying they're going to suspend him, to which he said, "I will resign, sir. I will resign." To which Max Verstappen then said, "No Helmut Marko, no Max Verstappen." Which then, it's just like an avalanche of news, because then Mercedes came out with this story that they have told James Vowles that if Max Verstappen signs with Mercedes, then Williams will sign Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli. We're gonna have another Kimi on the grid potentially. So I don't know if any of this is actually gonna happen. They've already kind of shut it down, but yeah, a lot of dominoes seem to be falling if Helmut Marko goes. I know he brought Max in, but I don't know why Max is so tethered to him. And I'll let you speak on that in a second. And then there's the ongoing, is he in, is he out? Not to make sexual innuendo, but is Christian Horner in? Is Christian Horner out?
Yes.
It seems like it was over. Like he's keeping his job. they're kind of making everyone else feel like they've been in the wrong for reporting on a story that they said wasn't true. There's at least some smoke and fire there. But now reports are coming out that he's going to be out by Australia. Again, I don't believe any of these because they seem to just come and go. But what is your take on Dr. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner maybe being in, maybe being out, maybe was in? Go ahead.
This situation has sort of gone from, it just seems to have like progressively gotten less and less understandable. Like it just feels like it's just becoming even more like nonsensical. I do think it's kind of interesting that Jos and Max are so tethered to Helmut that they're willing to say goodbye to arguably the most dominant F1 car of all time and join a team that they've had nothing but disdain for, at least in the public eye. But yeah, the crazy thing to me is just like how many times it's gone from back and forth where Christian's innocent. Oh, he actually isn't innocent. Oh, he's cleared. Oh, nope, he's not. There's the leaks. Oh, now Red Bull have fully backed Christian. Christian confirms he is here to stay. Nothing more is going to be said. And then literally this morning it says that one of the CEOs of Red Bull Racing is wanting to fire Christian Horner. So I don't know. I don't honestly think we'll see Christian fired just because it just seems like this is sort of the tail end of the situation. Like it's all starting to simmer down and settle. Something that I did find interesting is how like quick and willing Mercedes were to jump on these Max Verstappen rumors. Like it just seemed, I'm not going to say it was disrespectful, but for a guy who they've pretty much had, I mean, they obviously can say good things about Max and the things he's been able to achieve, but as far as, you know, the past and the history with Lewis, it just felt a little like Toto was like chomping at the bit to talk about this. He was like, I would have Max in a heartbeat. So, and also alluding to the fact that that could be a play in the future. But then again, it's always hearsay. Max could run the rest of his contract to the end of 2028. It's just, it's so confusing. I wish the actual on-track racing was as dramatic as this off-season, or not off-season, but behind the scenes has been, because it's been a shit show.
Yeah, it's entertaining, but also a little frustrating.
Yes.
We would like to have some better on-track stuff to talk about, but I guess if there's drama on or off the track, whatever helps our numbers, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly.
But it seems like the off-the-track stuff is doing that, but I guess it'd be nice to have some stuff other than Red Bull to talk about, because they're dominating on the track and the news off the track, so
they are.
I don't really know.
Jesus.
But I guess to make things come all full circle, Kimi Antonelli's hold on, let me do a little transition sound here. That was loud. To make things full circle, Kimi Antonelli's F2 teammate, Oliver Bearman, who I will herefore refer to as Bearman, he was kind of the story of the week. So we'll get into a couple of takeaways from Jeddah. We're not going to go like lap by lap or anything, because nobody wants to hear that once the race is a few days past. But there's a couple things that stood out to me. First being Ollie Bearman, I think 11th in qualifying, and then finished 7th in the race ahead of Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. Like, pretty unbelievable. Very impressive. Every single person in the paddock and in the F1 media seems to be just amazed by how well he did. I think his qualifying time in F2, which he was on pole, was 1 minute 42 seconds, and qualifying pole in F1 is like 129, 128, around there. So like a good over 10 seconds per lap. So for someone to say like, oh, he just did that track, like it's a completely different track, different braking zones, way faster. Just and one of the tightest, least forgiving tracks on the calendar, as you could see from Mr. Lance Stroll. God, is
ow.
Yeah. Can you get the car to the pits? No, I'm in the wall. That's fucking guy. He needs to go. But yeah, so any thoughts on Mr. Bearman?
Yes, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I'm going to briefly talk about him in another segment. But he really was impressive, and I've seen some people making jokes that he could be Nick DeVries Part 2. I don't think that's the case. I honestly, I was a little disappointed that he didn't make Q3. I was like, oh, I not that I was like shitting on him or anything, but it just felt, I was like, oh, I feel like if he had managed to, whatever. But the way he was able to climb up to P7. Really, really outstanding job. And yeah, I think he's not going to say like taking the spotlight off of Liam Lawson, but I definitely think there's more eyes maybe gauging away. Like I feel like Liam Lawson was like the next guy that was going to become a full-time F1 driver, but could be Ollie now. I mean, he absolutely killed it. And his dad's reactions during quali and the race were just really, really fun to watch. So I'm very happy for him and this opportunity. Also glad that Carlos was surgery was a success, and it was really funny.
A smooth operation. Oh, sorry,
smooth operation.
Step on your. Damn it.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
I thought it was wild that he actually showed up to the race. And if you watch the video of him walking into the paddock, I mean, it looked like he was struggling to walk. Like the man probably should have been in a wheelchair or something like that. But he probably has a little bit too much pride for that, which I do admire. But I do think it was cool of him to show up, and just the outpour of support for Ollie was really cool to see. I love that in moments like where Max and Perez are just easily soaring to P1 and P2. There's still some really interesting things, like back when Lawson took over in Netherlands for Daniel Ricciardo. I just really like when mix-ups like that happen. It gives you more to focus on in a maybe not so entertaining race overall.
Yeah, it was just an all-around amazing performance from start to finish. And I guess the difference between him and Lawson, although I kind of just thought of a caveat, is that Ferrari kind of has Haas to maybe put their guys in. Like he can maybe start at Haas next year, where Lawson isn't going to jump right into Red Bull.
No.
But if the caveat I just thought to that is if Daniel Ricciardo doesn't get it together, I mean, he could easily replace him at AlphaTauri, which is not called AlphaTauri anymore. They're calling it on the broadcast RB, which I never thought was going to be the case. I thought it would be VCarb or something of the nature, but they're just calling it RB, which if people were watching and they didn't know, they would just think that's Red Bull. But hey, that's what they're going with, so that's what we'll go with.
Weird.
Pretty bad weekend for Daniel. I know he had like a 40-second pit stop, but
he did. People are seeming to forget that on like Twitter. He's getting completely clowned. So I'm not counting him out yet, but I do think he needs to sort of pick up the pace a little bit. Like he's got to, maybe not every single weekend, but he's got to be consistently beating Yuki. Like I said, not every single time, but yeah, it's getting a little bit concerning. I feel like he just really needs to get that fire underneath him, because that Red Bull seat is slipping away. Because Perez, even though he's not been anywhere near Max, he's been doing his job. He's done exactly what Red Bull wanted him to do. So as far as that second seat is concerned, it could stay with Perez for another season after this year, which is not what I want, but nope, he's not doing his job. I don't know. We'll have to see.
He's going to kind of make his hay, or whatever you want to call it, in the second half of the season, because we've seen this before from Perez, where he starts out the season very strong, and not that he's keeping up with Max, like you said, but he's at least holding his own, and then he just falls off a cliff halfway through the season. So we'll see where Checo stands after the summer break. But for now, yeah, he's pretty much done. I mean, they've had 1-2s in both races. So Daniel Ricciardo, just to wrap that up, next race obviously is Australia, his home race. So that'll be pretty telling, because if he's not motivated or chomping at the bit to perform well there in front of his home fans for the first time, and he didn't race there last year, I don't think, because he was not on a team. So look forward to that. But speaking of Haas, we kind of touched on them. I thought they had a very interesting strategy, and there's 2 points I want to make on it. One is, it's funny that Red Bull is complaining about it, saying they need to look into it, because if anyone remembers 2021 Abu Dhabi, is exactly what Perez did to Lewis, is backing him up. But yeah, just go over it quickly. Magnussen received 20 seconds worth of penalties pretty quick, so they realized he's not going to get points. So they used him to back up the entire field, so that so that Nico Hulkenberg could basically get a free pit stop and finish 9th, I believe, or 10th. They got a point, so 10th. I'll pull it up, but it doesn't matter, 9th or 10th. I guess Lewis, so 10th. I guess this year there's not much points to be had for the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th place teams, because the top 5 are kind of in a class of their own above them. That's like Red Bull, and then the next 4 teams are kind of week by week. So there's really not many points to be had for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So any points you can get is a big win. And for Haas, I think they're 6th now in the constructors. They're, like I said, the other teams aren't getting many points. That 1 point. So it's pretty big. But yeah, Kevin Magnussen was kind of being, he was, it's nice that he listened to his team, knowing that he wasn't getting any points supporting Nico. But it was interesting to watch him going like 2 seconds slower on some laps just to back everyone up, but doing it in such a strategic way that no one could pass him. He would kind of do it on the straights and stuff, but then in the last turn, he would make sure he had enough momentum that people couldn't get close enough to get by him. So, any thoughts on the kind of Haas masterclass?
Yeah,
With Gunther out, they're getting points now.
I don't think Gunther could have pulled that off. I'm not going to lie.
No,
it is wild though. Yeah, he's going to fuck smash the rest of the grid. I do think we could see if they do. I do think Nico is going to stick around. At least I hope. I could see Oliver potentially replacing Kevin Magnussen. I think it's hilarious just that he was doing that, but it is cool that he was willing to help out his teammate. This is going to sound kind of silly, but it takes a lot of skill to be slow, because he easily could have just slowed down, and then, the Racing Bulls or Bottas or whoever could have just immediately flown past him, depending on how slow he is. But he kind of channeled Fernando Alonso in there a little bit. He knew exactly when to slow down, and he knew exactly when to block and to speed up. So he knew, so he could let Nico build that gap. Yeah, I mean, that just shows you how much points mean to these smaller teams. You've got Max already with 52 points, more points than I would wager the bottom 2 or 3 teams will get all season. So it means a lot to them. And I love when they're able to pull off ridiculous strategies like that, especially at a track like Jeddah. It takes a lot. And the fact that they were able to pull it off is really something. It is kind of cool. Nico Hülkenberg is 11th in the standings, but Oliver Bearman is 10th in the standings. So Ferrari have 3 drivers in the top 10 right now, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
So shout out to him. They've got 3 Ferrari drivers, and yet nowhere near Red Bull. They're second. I can't believe Mercedes is 4th in the constructors. That just occurred to me. Wow. Anyways, so we've talked about Bearman. We've talked about the Haas Masterclass. Let's talk a little bit more about some teams a little bit farther up the grid. I want to kind of discuss McLaren just a little bit. Sort of, to me, the biggest highlight for McLaren was Lando's jump start at the beginning, and when Lando was leading the race for that very brief moment of time. I was at a set call. I think you mentioned this last week at your episode. So I wasn't able to watch live, but I was getting updates. And then, of course, I watched it back like 2 hours after the race started. All I got was just a text from my dad that just said, Norris in the lead. And I literally was like, hey guys, I'm going to use the bathroom real fast. Ran in there and I was like, oh, damn it. And he was like, he had already been passed by Max by the time I could check the feed. I was like, son of a bitch. What's the point?
Yeah.
But
so I don't know if you were able to go back and watch, but Mercedes and there was when Stroll crashed, everyone pit except for Norris and Hamilton. So there was a brief moment where Norris was first, and then I believe Max, and then Lewis was third. But as time went, they got passed, and it kind of didn't end up being a good strategy, which Lewis called in the moment, as he does. The 2 of them, I've got it up right now. The 2 of them finished 8th and 9th. They couldn't get past the Bearman. So I don't know. I guess you got to take that risk. For Norris, you definitely have to take that risk, because if there was another yellow flag or something, or red flag while he was in the lead, then he could have switched to fresh tires. And I don't know if he would have been able to hold off Max, probably not, but he certainly would have finished higher than 8th. So that was definitely worth the risk for him. I don't think it was worth the risk for Mercedes and Hamilton, but that seems to be the MO this year with Mercedes, is not to really give a fuck about Hamilton and just do whatever George wants to do, which is very frustrating, but hey, what are you going to do? But yeah, let's talk about that jump start. That jump, and also shout out Piastri, because he finished 4th, really good. And he put out kind of a funny tweet. He said good 12 points or whatever, and now an expert on the Mercedes rear wing, because he was behind Lewis for 10 straight laps, and every lap they're is he going to get him on the DRS? And twice he did get him, but he sent it off track, so he had to let Lewis go past him. So that's fun. He seems to have a good little sense of humor on him. But yeah, good for him. He's obviously, we saw last year, he's a great driver. He's rated, so good for him. But yeah, that jump start, I don't know what happened. They're saying that the sensor just didn't go off. But I mean, Russell obviously saw it right off the when the second it happened, Norris's jump start. Norris even said that he knew he jump started. The broadcast said he had a jump start. Everyone watching saw that it was a jump start. Like, whether he got an advantage or not doesn't matter. He jumped to start. And the FIA's reasoning for not giving him a penalty is that the sensor didn't go off. So, like, hypothetically, what happens if the sensor, like, he could have just sent it then? Like, he could have just gone? Because he did jump to start and then kind of stop and then go, so which kind of maybe screwed him over. But his sensor wasn't working. He could have just jumped to start and then just sent it and then gone right past Max. Like, I don't know. It seems very strange that he wouldn't get a penalty for that. I love Lando, so I'm, like, not upset. But it's very strange that they would be like, oh, well, the sensor didn't go off. I mean, what if your pit monitor thing isn't off? And instead of going 60 down the pit lane, you're going like 150. Like, the sensor shouldn't be the marker of getting a penalty. But that was interesting. But again, I think it was worth it for McLaren to take that risk, so to speak, with Norris in the different strategies.
Sure. And
maybe they could have had a 4 or 5 if they would have pitted both of them. But you got to take that risk, because this year, just like last year and kind of the year before, it's very, very difficult to lead a single lap of any race now with Mr. Verstappen. So you kind of got to take that risk. I liked that they did it.
Yeah, got to take risks. I do think the jump start did actually end up hurting him when he stopped and started. By the time he actually was getting going, he was just getting flown by. So maybe that factored into a little bit.
We're leaving this in. It's because mine says it's still recording. Refresh your page, sir. Sir. Well, while he's refreshing his page, I will vamp. The next topic is, well, still on the same, but we're going to talk about Aston Martin a little bit. And I'm just checking Bahrain results. So I want to see, they finished 9th and 10th in Bahrain.
I think I'm back.
I think you're back. Let's see. Yeah, you're back on mine. So we'll check it.
How long does it say we've been recording for?
22 minutes and 19 seconds.
It says 14 seconds for me. We'll see what happens.
Let's hope. Worst case, we'll have to redo it, but I think we're on a good roll here, so whatever.
I know what happened. My charging cable unplugged, and then my screen froze, and as soon as I plugged it back in, everything went completely back to normal. But my battery's... technology, son of a bitch.
That's kind of my gears. Yeah, I was just discussing... yeah, fucking Chargers. I was just discussing Aston Martin, how they seem to have made a pretty good improvement. I mean, Fernando Alonso was complaining about the car last week. They were 9th and 10th in Bahrain, and Lance Stroll shit the bed this week, as one does. I think he's the only driver that's raced in every Jeddah. There's been 2020. This is the 4th race at Jeddah, and I think he's the only one that's raced in every single one of those, but not gotten a point. So seems to. I mean, he had that really bad crash last year. His dad is just. I don't know what they're gonna do. He's got to kind of shit or get off the pot, because it's not the car anymore, it's him. But
sure.
After we thought Fernando Alonso might leave after this year or retire, because that car didn't look very good in Bahrain, on a faster track looked much better. So just gonna see here, Saudi Arabia, Fernando. I know you picked him to get podium, but he still finished 5th, and he was pretty close to Oscar in 4th. So the car looked a lot better, but it doesn't really matter when you only have one guy driving the car, and the other guy probably wouldn't have got points anyways. So, but that also just scares me as a Lewis fan, that like, if Sainz would have been qualifying, when Bearman finished 11th, the next guy on the chopping block was Lewis. Lewis was sitting in that drop zone. He was 10th. So if Sainz was qualifying, Lewis would have been out in Q2. And again, if Lance Stroll could drive a car, Lewis would have been 10th. Like, he's getting close to not even getting points here. So, I don't know what the hell Mercedes is doing, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Aston Martin. Do you think it was just like a one-off, then that was like a Alonso showing his stuff, or do you think they actually have made some good improvements and they're kind of maybe, I mean, last year they were like a distinct second off the start of the year, but then seems like they kind of spent their wad or blew their wad at the beginning and didn't have any money left or whatever left to improve the car throughout the year. Whereas this year, they, at least through 2 weeks, they've kind of made an improvement, it looks like. So do you think this bodes well for them through the rest of the year, or do you think it was just kind of a one-off?
I think they sort of are on the same level as maybe like Mercedes, and I also think that the car is much quicker in qualifying than the actual race, clearly. because I was actually thinking Lance might actually be able to get some points based off his qualifying performance, and his Q1 lap time was great. I mean, he put a really, really quick lap in, but yeah, he just isn't able to be consistent like Fernando Alonso is. I was definitely disappointed that my podium bet did not work. I mean, people were talking about Fernando potentially getting pole in Jeddah, so it is disappointing, but I think they're going to potentially be able to come back. I don't know if I see them higher than potentially like fifth. I guess fifth. Like I just don't really see them. Like I can see it'll be like a 3-way battle between them, McLaren, and Mercedes. I think
that's what I was just writing down. Is like what the current pecking order. Like it's obviously, again, it's only been 2 weeks, even though it feels like longer. But I think it's distinct. There's a distinct Red Bull, obviously number 1, and then Ferrari, I think, is a distinct number 2. And then I guess McLaren number 3 right now, and then 4th and 5th Aston Martin or Mercedes are pretty close. But I mean, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Mercedes, as you said, I think they're going to kind of go up and down, back and forth as the season goes on. But right now, it's clear Red Bull, and then Ferrari. Just like at this point last year, it was clear Red Bull and then Aston Martin. So obviously that can change, but Lewis's decision is looking better by the moment.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you saw this as we move on to. Hold on 1 second. Hope it's not as loud in the recording as it is in my ear. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I'm not sure if you saw this F1 Academy penalty. Something that I've never seen before in two regards. So F1 Academy race winner Dorian Pin was handed a 20-second penalty after the race, which promoted second place Abby Pulling to the top step of the podium. Pin is a Mercedes driver, so of course, once again, Mercedes gets the short end of the stick. But what happened was, I guess she didn't know when the race was over. As I drop things, my screen just cut out. Oh, okay, we're good. I guess she didn't know that the race was over. Didn't see the checker flag, so she did an extra lap, full speed, which obviously is dangerous. But she won the race, and then that 20-second penalty dropped her down to 9th. So hopefully this recording's going okay, because it's choppy right now on my side, but we'll find out afterwards. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. Is she won, but then she got dropped to 9th because she did an extra lap. Do you think that's too harsh, or do you think that's her fault?
I mean, that's kind of on her engineer, isn't it? I mean, I don't think it's kind of feasible for the drivers to sort of be counting the laps every single time. You know, you see in F1 all the time drivers are asking, what lap are we on? How many laps are left? So I don't think that's on the driver at all. 20 seconds seems really excessive. I mean, I could see if maybe there was a close call where she like flew by somebody that was on a cool down lap after passing the checkered flag, but 20 seconds does seem ridiculously insane. You know, again, these cars are they're definitely slower than F1, so I guess the scale has to be a little bit different. Like, I don't think a 10-second penalty would affect the F1 Academy as much as like Formula One, but yeah, dropping the winner to 9th place, I think you said, is completely unfair.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough break. I don't think, just like you said, I don't think it's her fault at all. Although maybe a little bit of awareness, like, wouldn't you notice that no one around you is? But like, I just don't get that. Would her engineers not have come on and been like, "Congratulations, you won the first F1 Academy race,"
or final lap?
Yeah,
this is the final lap.
I don't really understand how that happened. Maybe her radio comms went out or something. Yeah, I don't really know the details of it. Maybe I should have if I put this on the notes, but it seems like a strange thing. And on the topic of F1 Academy, shout out Lewis, because as far as I know, he was the only driver that actually showed up and was present for F1 Academy. I know he's been a big champion of it, so he kind of has to be there. But
absolutely,
so Zach Brown was there, Susie Wolf was there. There's a picture of it's just like I don't think anything to make anything of it, but there's a picture of Zach Brown and Susie Wolf and Lewis Hamilton, and Susie Wolf is the way she's looking at Lewis Hamilton. Looks like he's a tasty little treat that she wants to yum 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 yum.
I mean, that's how most of the world
so
looks
I look at Lewis. I mean, it's just a handsome.
I don't blame you.
But yeah, that's a little bit harsh, but I guess that's the racing world. I saw a lot of people kind of poo-pooing the F1 Academy, but I don't know. I think it's good that they're doing it. I think eventually one of these girls, whether it's one that's in there right now, or someone that's coming along is going to eventually be an F1. And I think if anyone that thinks that's a bad thing just has a big poo-poo in their pants. It's like, who cares? The best drivers are the best drivers. So if one of them becomes one of the top 20 drivers in the world, because quite frankly, there's a couple of drivers in F1 right now that probably shouldn't be there. Stroll. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think we can move on now to, ready for it? Did you know? And yes, we said we we're going to update those graphics. We will get to updating them. We'll make them more cohesive and better. I just did a AI graphic maker thing, and apparently Capwing.
Hey, it's just the two of us,
I know.
man. It's just
we need
the two
a team.
of us.
So our engineers weren't on that one. But yeah, did you know? You want to go first? Ask me if I know.
Yes, I'm happy to go first.
Go first.
So I decided to have I'm going to call it a fact, my did you know fact, be related to Fernando Alonso, since I bet that he would, I think I placed $20 that he was going to place on the podium. Obviously did not happen, so I thought it'd be nice to have a fact related to a Fernando Alonso podium, or at least what could have been a podium. Did you know that in 2007, at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso held up Lewis Hamilton during their tire change in Q3? And I watched the video. You can actually see they, pull the flap up. Everything's good to go. The light switches, and Fernando just sits there. Lewis is behind him. He sits there for 10 seconds, causing Hamilton to miss his lap by less than 2 seconds. He crossed the line less than 2 seconds after Q3 timer ended, and Alonso ended up securing pole with his lap time. But justice was served, and Alonso was given a 5-place grid penalty and knocked down to P6 after being reprimanded for the incident. And of course, with the lap that Lewis had already set, he still held on to P2, and he ended up winning the GP after getting promoted to P1. And when all was said and done, Fernando Alonso ended up getting P4. So just shy, once again, of a podium. And to me, that just goes to show you, don't play dirty.
Yeah,
you don't play dirty. It's never going to work for you.
That's an
as much as I love Fernando,
move.
I mean, I'm going to send you the clip when we're done recording. It's going to make you angry, especially knowing that he is a world champion driver doing that to his rookie teammate.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I missed that part. Or I wasn't watching in 2007, but I just wish F1 was like a little bit of that spice was still in there.
If that happened right now,
it is in some other ways, but
the world would burn.
Oh, yeah, imagine Lando did that to Oscar last year. People would be like rioting outside of Lando's
People
home.
would be saying, like, get him off the grid. This is unacceptable. Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, no, that's very interesting. My did you know? So I was watching the race with a couple of friends this weekend, and someone asked, like, how much do these cars actually like cost? How much are they worth? Not worth in terms of buying. Like, how much does it cost to build one of these cars? Or if they wreck a car, how much is it really going to cost out of the cap to build a new one? So I looked it up. Did you know the cost of an F1 car is between $7 and $8 million per car? That's pretty expensive. That's all. That's all I got.
That is, I mean, when you think about like some of the most high end sports cars that you see like on the road that are regulated to be able to be driven, that are street legal, you got some of the most expensive cars of all time, and they're not even crossing the million mark. So these are the most premier sports cars of all time. And it also really goes to show you how, I don't even know the word to use, how resourceful the engineers are, because Logan Sargent last year caused, I have the number right here, he caused $4.3 million in damage. And he crashed multiple times. But when you think about that, that's not even a full car.
Yeah.
That's only half a car.
Yeah,
basically. But still, that is still an insane amount of damage.
Like Gogo Joe had a crash in practice 3, and they didn't really get him back up for qualifying. They kind of did, but he didn't make it to the line in time.
Almost.
It was close. Yeah, they had to really pretty much redo the entire car. And I don't know how much that would have cost them, but yeah, the engineers it's pretty mind-blowing what they're able to do on a week-to-week basis. Like,
yes,
they're the unsung heroes, I'd say, of the F1 world. Oh.
Absolutely.
So we'll move off that onto, try turning it down a little bit. Onto the updated bet standings. As you mentioned, you had an Alonso podium. Thankfully, didn't have to. We had some trouble finding the odds, so thankfully, for me at least, thankfully he didn't get a podium, because then I would have had to find somewhere after the fact what the odds were beforehand. But he didn't win, so it doesn't really matter what the odds were. But you lost $20. You were at $80. You're now at $60. I had Perez podium, but the odds were only 1.66. I risked half my $50, $25 that is, obviously, and only made $16.50. So I am from $50 up to $66.50. So currently sits at RJ $66.50, Adrian $60. So we're still pretty close. Only 2 in out of 24. It's crazy that we have 24 races this year, 22 left. So
yeah,
still
that's
a lot to go on.
I will say I will not be making similar picks that I've made. I went with Lewis at the start because I just had faith that he was going to come in ready to go. His final year with Mercedes. Of course, they've dropped the ball tremendously. And then Fernando Alonso, I was on the hype train. I'm going. It's going to be real boring. I need to. I've been at two weeks back in a row or back to back of losses. So we're going to be going either Max, Perez, or Leclerc next week, or it won't be next week, but next race week, because I can't be going down it that much.
Yeah, at this point, it's either it looks like it's. That's why with Perez, I was like, I need a winner. I can't go down to $25, but kind of looks like it's gonna be until some upgrades come. Yeah, the Rebels of the Ferraris. So, depending on what the odds are, if Perez has better odds than Leclerc, I'm just going to keep taking Perez. But I assume they'll update that so that Perez doesn't have as good of odds. But we'll see. I'd rather win $16 than lose whatever, even if the odds are better on a guy like Lewis. But
I agree.
We'll see. We now can move on to our shoutouts. Here comes another.
There he goes.
Oh, speedy. Oh, zoom. All right, shout out. I'll go first this time. My shout out of the week. It's a bit of a deep cut, but I read this article. I sent it to you, but it's quite long, so I don't expect you to have read it. This lady named Kate Wagner, she penned an article called Behind F1's Velvet Curtain. And within one day of it being published, it was mysteriously pulled off the internet. But as people on the internet do, they archived it, and it is still available to read. And I read it. It was kind of long. Some parts were a little bit of a slog, because she was talking about her previous experience covering like Tour de France and stuff, which I couldn't care less about. But at the end of the day, very, very interesting perspective from someone that doesn't really have a bias towards F1. In fact, probably a bias against F1, if anything. Just kind of talking about the absurd amount of money and sports washing and glitz and glam that goes into F1 for the top 1%, and like people that are attending the races in these insane boxes and drinking champagne that's worth more than like our yearly salaries and all this stuff. And then there's people in general admission that can't even see the race. They're trying to like peek through a fence, or people that are, the real fans, so they really can't get anything. But there's people watching from, like in Vegas, $1 million. Like she went to Coda for the US Grand Prix, which is one of the more affordable races, and still like the ridiculous stuff that goes on. Like again, the outfits that people are wearing, the champagne, the boxes that they're in, and they couldn't care less about F1. They're there to, shake hands and do business deals and all that stuff. So it was an interesting read into kind of the other side of F1, and kind of get her opinions on some of the drivers, because she did get very good access. So it was interesting to hear her opinions on meeting some of the drivers and kind of her perspective on the whole Verstappen thing that's kind of killing the sport. And she really had a lot of really good things to say about Lewis, which was nice. But if you haven't seen that, people out there, check out, it's Behind F1's Velvet Curtain by Kate Wagner. It's a good little article. So that is my shout out of the week.
Very nice. As much as I love F1, it's not a sport for the people.
No,
it's not. Sadly. My shout out is a little more boring, a little less insightful. I kind of teased it a little bit earlier. It's Oliver Bearman, because it's not very often that a rookie is able to pull out such a result at what's arguably, I would put Jeddah in the maybe even top 3, but just to be safe, top 5 hardest tracks. I mean, just in the game, from the driver's perspective and their interviews that they've given. So big shout out to him. Hope to see him not for the same reasons, but I hope to see him in an F1 car again at some point.
Yeah, I think we will. I think if not next year, then definitely in 2026. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to judge, I guess, by one race. But hopefully we'll see him and Liam Lawson in an F1 car, and apparently Kimi Antonelli in an F1 car. Hopefully it's not another Nick DeVries situation. But
we'll see about
if
that.
Max somehow goes to Mercedes, then I guess we'll see Kimi at Williams. But I don't know. I think it's a little early for him. He's 16, 17 years old. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he got 10th this weekend, which is a little unremarkable to me.
Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that it's a steep learning curve and maybe give him a couple more weeks. But yeah, I think...
yeah, and the Prima's apparently really slow too, so we'll just have to wait and see how that...
It was the first week, but then again, like, before Bearman got pulled up to F1, he set pole in qualifying in F2s, and he's his teammate, right? So, I don't know. But yeah we'll definitely see how that goes. Even Toto said he maybe... put a little too much pressure and kind of anointed him as the next Verstappen a little too early, which that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, big misstep.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's pretty much all we got. We don't have a race preview this week because Australia is next week, so we'll tee that up next week. Have a lot of stuff for you guys. I'm sure there'll be more Red Bull news that'll drop over the next few days. I'm sure we'll have some sort of drama in or outside of the paddock, so keep an eye and ear out for that. Any final words from you before I send us out of here?
Make sure to come back next week for our preview of the Australian GP, and follow me and RJ on Twitter, X, and follow the Shake and Bake F1 channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most importantly, give the video a like. It really helps us as far as the algorithm is concerned. We're just trying to grow our audience here. Say this every single week. So if you like our show, just do whatever you can.
Throw a comment in there too on the YouTube. That helps as well with the algorithm. And
yeah, exactly.
As always, remember, if you're not first, you're last.
Yeah.
Shake and bake.
Shake